She promised us strong and stable leadership in the national interest, not a Corbynite coalition of chaos. Well, she's apologised to MPs for getting us into this hot mess, but to the public, she's repeating robotic sound bites about getting on with the job.
A cabinet that will get on with the job of government, and we're going to be getting on with the job. What the public want is to ensure that the government is getting on with that job. But what I'm doing now is actually getting on with the immediate job. This is a government getting on with the job.
But nothing disguised the fact that she's in office, but she's not in power. She's merely being propped up in Downing Street by the DUP and Tory Eurosceptics desperate to avoid an immediate election. This makes Mrs May a puppet PM, with the DUP and its 10 MPs on one side and hard Brexit shop stewards on the other, pulling her strings, and the nation's expected to swallow her platitude that nothing has changed. She's only being allowed to squat at number 10 on sufferance, so long as she sticks with the programme and doesn't succumb to pressure to pursue a soft or softer Brexit. We have to ask, is it really in the national interest to have our children and grandchildren's futures determined by a woman on life support, a hostage in Downing Street?
I love that line going round at the moment, by the way, that Mrs May is between the devil and the DUP, which I think is so clever. And there will not be an Ulsterman with a pothole in his road by the time this all comes to an end. But what you seem to be arguing for, if I'm right, is that you would want to do it again? You would want a general election again? Is that what you're saying? She should have thrown her hands up and said, this is a complete disaster. Is that what you're saying? Because I honestly don't think there's the appetite. I think we all refer to... And Brenda in Bristol, of course, is the greatest political sage of all.
Not another one.
I don't think... I'm damn certain the Conservatives don't want one.
Well, you know why they don't want one, because they see Corbyn, the barbarians are at the gate, Nick.
It depends who was leading the party, and we probably will come on to that later. No, it depends who was at the helm. So the Conservatives don't want one.
Corbyn is not leaving the Labour Party, Nick.
No,
come on.
the Conservatives.
I see, sorry.
And I don't think Labour can afford one. And I honestly, and I will shut up now, but I'm certain my listeners... Oh, no, they don't want one at the moment. Really, I think they are election exhausted.
Before you finish, though, there is a difference between not wanting another election...
But what are you saying?
...and having...
What are you saying? Are you saying she moves aside and someone else takes over the party?
I think there's no evidence so far that actually she's had the software update that is needed in order for her to proceed, for the device to be operating properly.
But I'm just moving you further down the line. So should she quit and have another election?
Nick, admit, she is a caretaker PM.
I totally agree.
She's not going to take us into another election.
No, I agree.
So what I'm saying is we're going to have uncertainty about her tenure as long as she's in Downing Street.
So are you saying she should stand down?
She has no authority. It's a complicated situation. Don't force me into saying... I'm just stating the facts. She is a Prime Minister in power, but not in authority.
I think she should have stood down, personally. I think she's lost all authority. She took us into an election that she didn't need... Yeah. So she could get a bigger majority. I don't blame her for doing that. All politicians would have done. Any politician would have done that. But when you fail, you have to go. And she should have actually resigned.
She should have resigned, you're right. But the fact that she didn't... And the thing is, if we keep picking at her now... she has now lost all authority in Europe. They're mocking her, the collapse of her authority in Europe. So when she goes in there to get us a deal, we're going to get a weaker deal than we got before. She should have resigned, or we should have sacked her, but we haven't. And I think she's been quite gutsy to stay on, actually, because she knew the humiliation that was coming. Quite rightly, she knew about the anger, she knew all of that, but she stayed on. And because she stayed on, there really is no alternative. Your brother's going to get it eventually, but even he says, not now. If she's there, we have to back her, because Britain's future actually does depend on her.
But isn't she staying on, Graham, in Downing Street at a very high price?
Oh,
Northern Ireland peace process.
Absolutely, but obviously we can't sack her. That's up to
the
in-house. The Tories should have done something. But I think there's no obvious replacement for her.
Exactly.
This coalition, potentially or likely coalition with the DUP.
It's not actually going to be a coalition.
But this relationship. This relationship with the DUP is going to cause a huge rift as well within the political establishment, I think without doubt, because of the DUP's background and what they stand for. So I think we're in an unholy mess. And actually, I think it is a case of patching her up and getting her out there and as long as you can. I don't think it necessarily plays into the Brexit argument so much, because I think that we've got to almost try and isolate that and think of that as a separate subject going forwards. But in terms of your subject and the authority or lack of authority that she has, I mean, it's obvious. I mean, she's got no charisma. She's going, every time she speaks in public, people are going to be picking holes in her.
But I think the alternative is that all of this is going to do is cause a Tory split, and a Tory split means one thing. It means Jeremy Corbyn in government, and it means all his hard-left policies. Now, if that's what the Tories want...
That split's been there for a long time,
they should keep on picking at her.
The split's been there for a long time.
I want to ask the panel, do we think if she remains in power as PM, will actually the Tory party split as she tries to go forward with her plan, which is still the Lancaster House programme? She has not deviated one jot from saying we're going to leave Europe, leaving the single market, all the rest of it. And yet she's got more Remainers in her cabinet.
They let her run with it. They let her be the woman who takes Britain out of Europe, who perfects the Brexit. And then there's nothing Tories love more than stabbing each other in the chest. Power and warfare is what they love. So let her take this through the Brexit. Probably the country won't actually like the whiff of Brexit when it actually gets there. She then carries the cost. Boom, there's a fight, and who knows gets the part.
But it's not inconceivable that there has to be another election in the next couple of years. That actually there's not. It's quite a small majority. In the old days, if you tried to, even with the DUP, it's a small majority.
But in 74, 79, it was the same thing.
Yes,
but Greg's right, because she went into this election because she needed a bigger majority, because she knew that by the time of the next election, the Brexit would have hit the fan. And she needed that big cushion of 50 or so MPs who were going to lose their seats when everybody realised what a terrible idea Brexit is, in order for the Tories to remain in power.
You say that.
No, Nigel Lawson says that.
Hang on, but that's why she had to go, because she called an election only to increase her majority, because she said, if I don't get this, I can't deliver that. Well, she can't deliver that now because she's got less. So in which case she shouldn't have stayed. And it's up to the Tory party to decide who will be the leader.
My argument with it is that they couldn't deliver. When we talk about they couldn't deliver that, the way they conflated Brexit with an election, I think, was fundamentally wrong with their whole campaign, which is why Labour did so much better than people expected and why they did so much worse. Because that is such an unknown quantity, Brexit. The fact that all they did was push that divided, I think, the voting population even more, and has left her in an even more vulnerable position, because she didn't base it on policies that, if you did get a mandate as a majority, you could then start to cherry pick, as we know with mandates. I'm really against mandates because manifestos, because I just think they're full of promises that are never delivered. So, changing my word mandate for manifesto, I meant. Right. The fact is that if they'd gone with a more domestic manifesto, I think they would have got better support. But the fact they went all after Brexit...
But they didn't go after Brexit. This election was about everything but Brexit, Graham. This was about social care, the dementia tax. It was about student debt. It should have been about Brexit, but it didn't turn out to be like that for the Tories.
Because they got outmanoeuvred by the Labour Party.
Yes.
And the Labour Party produced a manifesto. This is wonderful for the Labour Party, because they're not in power. So they don't have to do it, because, I mean, many of us think what they were saying was too expensive and couldn't be done. But they're not in power. They seem to have won.
Well...
Yes, no, they seem to have won.
They think they've won. No one else thinks they've won. Well,
everybody writing about it and the rest of it sees it as a disaster for her and a success for Corbyn. So they seem to have won. At some stage, there's going to have to be another election. You can't go into the Tories can't, not this year maybe, but the Tories can't go into an election with her as the leader.
No.
But the thing is we are where we are, and we start Brexit talks next week.
Can't believe you said we are already.
But we are where we are. She is leader. They should have had a sacked her. They haven't sacked her. So to keep picking her apart now, that only damages us on a world stage.
You can argue who's us, but anyway, let's move on, because we'll be discussing Mrs May all through the programme, I have no doubt.